Good evening.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this month's Do Book Club conversation. Thank you for joining us early. It was needed because we've got an international cast. So we've got Libby joining us from the East Coast. We've got Maggie joining us from Kathmandu. Miranda's in Paris, and I'm at home in Leeds. And I'm where I normally am. So thank you all so much for joining us. It's going to be a bit special this evening, I can tell you. This is, yeah, I can't wait to get into this. But so I wanted to give a little space to Miranda just to talk a bit about the history of Do and Blink now, because this is a relationship that goes long before my involvement with the organisation. It goes back even before I was even aware of the Do. So Miranda, do you want to just say a couple of words about why we're here and the relationship, and then I'll pick up and then we'll get into the conversation.
For sure. Welcome everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm actually in rural France, and we're fingers crossed that the connection stays good. But yeah, I'm so thrilled and delighted to bring Maggie and Libby together this evening for a nice conversation about their work and their lives and careers and things. So in terms of the Do lectures, Maggie was quite an early speaker in 2010, and she spoke at Do USA, which was held in Hopland, California. And I wasn't able to go to that particular talk, but it has been watched many, many times. It's been one of the most watched Do lectures ever since then. Maggie was about 23 years old when she did that. And since then has gone on to do some crazy stuff. So we'll hear a bit more about that tonight. And then Libby sorry, I'm just letting people in as well. Libby, we were very fortunate to publish her book, Do Walk, last year. And she actually spoke at the Do lectures this July, which was great actually, and shared the stage with Cheryl Strayed, who's another famous walker, as you'll all know. So yeah, it's just great to have them both here finally. And of course, now both published authors. As you'll know, book club members, Maggie's published her first book, finally, which we were all waiting for. And yeah, it's a really great read. So yeah, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Miranda. So yeah, so it's kind of a special evening. I think, and you're not like parents, you're not supposed to have favorites, are you? But I think this pairing of books is probably the most powerful that we've had so far, because I think between them, what you get is questions about life and what you're contributing to it and how you make change. But it's not just about questions. There's answers in here as well. And when I first kind of thought about that, I thought, well, actually, it seemed to me like all the questions came from here and all the answers came from here. And then the deeper I read them, I realized there were a whole load of answers in here as well. We'll talk a bit about leadership and coping with change and life rushing in and rushing out again. There's some beautiful stuff in here, so I can't wait to do that. And then there's questions in here as well. This isn't just answers, it's finding time to ask yourself some really important questions. So I know it's going to be a great one. I know, Maggie and Libby, your relationship goes back a long time. So how often do you actually get together in person? Do you meet each other a lot?
Yeah, I mean, whenever we can. I know we were talking about this right before everything started, and we're like, we kind of just do life together. Libby is part fairy godmother to my children, part wise mentor, advisor, part matchmaker. She actually introduced me to my husband. Dee Dee, big sister to her son Oren. So we're family, we're friends, we're doing this all together, and whenever we can be together, whether it's Nepal or New Jersey. We were recently in California together, where she was my book tour doula. Because I'd had a baby and a book at the same time. Definitely don't do that. It's not a good idea. But yeah, we love each other. I can't imagine my life without Libby.
I would say the same thing. We did get on. I already said I love you, but I love you, Maggie. So, we had a conversation actually recently in New York about Maggie's book. So we do this as often as we possibly can.
Oh, well, we're honored to have you, and I know you can feel the love, but there's so much love in the books as well. We'll sort of come back around to that. But there is so much love. So the way it's going to work, we're going to start off. Normally we start off with our do book. This time we're going to flip it around a bit. We're going to start by talking about Maggie's book, and we'll talk about the immensity of it, the winning the CNN Hero of the Year. And I know Maggie doesn't see herself as the winner, but the whole team. We'll talk about meeting the Dalai Lama, and we'll talk about life and how you deal with that and drive that and how your contribution changes and how you find your contribution. Then we'll talk a bit about Libby, because they're obviously, as we've heard, their stories interact, and how Libby's practice can help us all with our lives. So there'll be time for questions at the end. So I'm sure loads of people are going to have questions. Please save them up to the end. Mention them in the chat. There'll be 10 minutes for that. There'll be 10 minutes for that at the end. We are recording this. It's going to be online for 10 days after the event, just for book club members. And then it's going to disappear forever. So it's not like the do lectures talks, because we like to keep it a bit more informal, a bit more intimate. So it's not going to be here forever. But since we're talking walks, Libby, Maggie, I wanted to start by asking you both what your favorite walk is.
Libby, you go first.
Oh gosh, well, it's interesting because there are a number of walks that come to mind, some that were very solo and very personal. But since, here we are, Maggie and I have shared a number of really beautiful walks, including with our dear friend Karen, who's on. We've walked in a number of really beautiful places. I do remember a walk in Kathmandu, to be perfectly honest. I think Maggie was off doing something, had a meeting, and I had Ruby on my back in one of the kid carriers. In fact, I was just describing this to somebody the other day, and she was falling asleep. And I was new to Kathmandu. There were these beautiful sounds and beautiful fragrances. So dare I say that it was, I wouldn't say it was a sensual walk, but what I mean by that is all the senses were lit up and really vibrant. But the thing I really remember most is Ruby sitting in the backpack, falling asleep, and she just kept kept reaching up and just kind of rubbing my ear. When little kids do that, and they just sort of touch and kind of, it's almost like, are you still there? I'm sort of falling asleep. I'm not quite present in this moment, but I want to know you're there. And so in the scheme of, talking about our relationship and where we've been together, I think in many ways that was one of, it was a very tender, very loving walk. I don't know that we went far. I don't know how many steps we took. I don't even really remember exactly where we were, other than it was this sort of vibrancy of this beautiful country of Nepal and this beautiful capital, Kathmandu, and it being sort of big and vibrant and overwhelming in some ways, and the intimacy of the little fingers and little touch on my ear. So that's certainly one that I love.
Oh, I mean, those of us who like to walk, like Libby explained it so well, there's just so many different moments and what you get from the walk. But for me, I mean, my whole journey started with the walk as well. Just like the bus driver looking back to Sunita and I and being like, that's the end of the road, you have to walk, and then kind of going on this journey to find her home and her where she came from, and it was a search for her identity. It was a search for her understanding of where she came from, her own story, her own culture, and I was just going with her on that journey of finding home with and what it meant, especially after a civil war, and then just being open and present, and falling in love with Nepal as a place, and the people, and the landscape, and the resilience, and the strength, and the mountains. Everything for me started with a walk. And obviously it was like the time before taking pictures or like having a phone, and just being completely off the grid. And I wonder, like, I don't think any of my moments would have happened without, walking. Like, just the moment on the riverbed, to me, where everything just became crystal clear, the moment of, seeing war-torn Nepal, but also feeling its beauty, and it called to me in and invited me in. So yeah, I think walking does that, and it grounds you literally in the present, and it makes you more connected to your higher, truer, more inner self. And I worry so much about us losing that, and I'm so grateful for Libby for like watching her become a messenger of this, of like, let's just go back to the ancient the ancient wisdom, the ancient ways of walking, and just connect.
But I think that's one of the things I took from the book, Maggie, is that in Nepal, it's not an ancient thing, is it? You got to the end of the road and the bus driver said, well, this is it. You've got to go and walk. And I guess that's why I asked the question, because there's a different reason for walking there. It's a means of mobility, and the book, it really took me into, I've read lots of mountaineering literature. I expected that I would understand this place, and your book gave me a completely different understanding on a place that I thought I knew as this sort of lacking in technology, lacking in infrastructure, but also a much more connected life, but still war-torn. Did you have any understanding of what you were walking into?
No, I mean, so many people know Nepal as like Everest Base Camp, the trekkers' capital of the world. And we were so off that beaten track. Like, I was the first ever foreigner to kind of come to this place, and it was at the sort of height of the Civil War. Like, I was still young. I didn't know, or I didn't question. I didn't Google. I didn't like, it was just so innocent. It was like my friend and we're going to go to Nepal, and we're going to go find answers to the questions. And we were at that age where you're coming of age, you're going through all these transitions, you're trying to figure out your purpose. You don't know what you want to be. You have this world telling you what you should be. And the two of us were like, let's go, and packed up our backpacks, and that was that. And so many young people hear this story now, and the saddest tragedy of it all is that when young people read the story, their first reaction is like, my parents would have never let me do that. And we're definitely like, looking back, I'm like, I'm so grateful. My mom has this famous line, and she's always like, well, now, CNN's talking about you. If anything would have happened, we would have been on CNN for being the worst parents in the whole world. But it's true. Like, I'm so grateful for that time in my life, that rite of passage. Libby and I are both huge proponents for gap years. A year on, that's actually Oren, her son, came here on as part of his gap year. Just because we're losing that when we talk about ancient wisdom, ancient knowing, how we had so many of these things figured out before progress. Like, we lost rite of passage for young people, that time to kind of like question, where do I belong? What should I do with this life? And yeah, that's where I was. And I was just so privileged, and so nobody got what I got, that ability to just wander and travel and be connected and ask questions. The whole start of the story is just that, the privilege and the gift of being able to go and see where the world took me. Now it would be like, you're TikToking and It's just different, you know, like the world has changed so much. Like I might have been the last generation of backpackers that could just go off the grid and adventure.
It must seem strange, you know, you talked about before progress, but progress has caught you up. You got out there, and then it's come out and caught you up. It must have been strange seeing that unfold.
Yeah, I mean, so the Do lecture, I was kind of just like doing my thing. That's what I wanted to do. And I remember when the Do lectures called, and I was like, what? Like people give talks? Like they want me to talk? So when I came to the Do to like speak, it was so raw, that talk, because I'd literally never told that story. And I remember one of Do lecture's sort of anthems is like, give the talk you've never given. And I was like, I've never given a talk. What do you mean give a talk you've never given? Yeah, so much of it was like our mission, Tope and I, it was just innocence and like, let's try to do something. And yeah, and then along the way, I think by taking really small little baby steps and organically trying to figure things out with nothing, with very little, we built something magical. And we got on board for the ride. And actually now I'm like super grateful for the rise of social media and blogging and websites, because I also wouldn't have survived with the press and platforms like the Do that were up and coming at that time. Like I was lucky to ride that wave as a young 20-something.
Yeah, super powerful. Just to go back to that thing about the closing down of the youth, Libby, you must have come across stats about how the distance that young people walk nowadays has diminished massively, and every generation it diminishes, doesn't it? It shows us about, you know, a lot of your book is about walking as a route to freedom, and I loved how you call it a radical act of self-care, because it feels radical. I mean, I'm guessing particularly in the States, walking it's not a done thing anymore, is it?
No, and I would say that I've been going for a walk every day for the past 11 years, and I know in the scheme of things that's not terribly magnificent. There's undoubtedly people who've done it their entire life, but I think what I've done is try and really understand and keep track of what I've learned along the way. And I didn't know that initially that walking would have this kind of transformative effect on my life. Honestly, it was just a way to get outside. I wanted to be outside more. I realized that that was an essential thing. But yeah, I think it's really only thought of as locomotion or transportation, or honestly, a means to an end, rather than simply an incredibly potentially joyous, transformative act. But yes, I think you're right, Tim. I think very few, maybe, I don't want to say it's not really an age thing. I was going to say very few young people know the potential power of it. I think just universally, I think walking is about to have a moment, and put it in the sort of category of a seated meditation practice or a yoga practice. I think they all deliver kind of the similar learnings and a platform for spiritual inquiry, but I certainly didn't know that originally. So I think you're right, though. I think we haven't really explored the power of going for a walk, although Maggie certainly has used it as, it's, I do think, Maggie, in fact, I never really thought about that. Actually, much of your exploration and what you've discovered has come through that process, walking by the riverbed.
Yeah, we've never really like talked about it in that way or put our books together in that way. So good connection.
That's what we do. That's what we do. I mean, Maggie. So for those who've not seen the Do lecture talk and not read the book, you've given this talk lots of times now. Can you give us the snapshot of the first part of the story, sort of the bit that you told up to the Do lectures? So
Right.
going out there, meeting the girl in the riverbed.
Yeah, so I traveled to Nepal from across the Indian border where there was a major refugee crisis happening just geopolitically. The years 2005, 2006, there's a civil war that's created about 1 million orphan children. And I had been working on the India side of the border where I was meeting refugees and child laborers and displaced families. And my friend Sunita and I decided we're going to go on a walk and try to find her family. And then I fall in love with this place. I start asking lots of questions. I meet Sunita's uncle, who is now my co-founder, Tope. And we decide, as the war is sort of coming to an end, that we're going to move here and we're going to try to be a part of the solution of, educating and empowering Nepal's children and rebuilding a community following, travesty and loss. And we basically moved here and decided to start just with one kid. And that one little girl, her name was Hema, and she was breaking rocks on the side of the riverbed alongside many, many dozens of other children. And we kind of like drew a circle around Hema and her rock breaking 5, 6, 7-year-old peers and decided we're going to try to change this. And one day we want to walk across this riverbed and not see children breaking rocks. And that over the years has expanded and sort of multiplied into a community-based organization where we educate and empower women and children and the community with many, many layers and pillars of programming. But it's about creating a model for change and creating a model for children affected by poverty and war. Yeah.
And all that from one moment of connection with a young girl. I just find that so powerful because what you've done came from something that all of us can do, and it's what Libby's asking us to do, isn't it? It's to be in that moment and share a connection with someone, and from that, great, enormous, incredible things can come from that. That's just so powerful. It's so very powerful. You must have felt the ripples rippling out from that, not just within the community that you're working with, but in the people who've heard this story as well. Can you take that in? Can you make sense of the impact that you've had?
I mean, yes, sometimes. I also love that our messages are just one small thing, one small act. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be, it's too overwhelming to look at all of the problems of the world. We'll just curl up in a ball and give up and just eat potato chips and quit because it's so intense right now. We talk about the human family and how we basically we're failing. And so there's so much overwhelm. And I think the beauty and the innocence, when I look back at 18-year-old Maggie and 19-year-old, is the only thing I can control is this one little thing in front of me. The only thing Libby can control in the morning is taking that first step and lacing up and doing that one thing. And that I try to make that my message for young people or for everyone, the blinders and just do that one small act. And it doesn't have to be big. And that one small step will lead you to another and another and another. And we just have to kind of try to quiet down the noise. But yeah, there was a clip of that Do lecture that got seen 300 million times. It went viral. And the question all over the world was I want to do what you did. How do I do it? Can you help me? Can you teach me? And that's when I started to realize the power of people don't want more stuff. They don't need more. For the most part, humans are really good and we do want a better world. And the power in sharing the story has been realizing just how interconnected we all are and just how we all want a better world. And definitely, we can all agree on children. It's the easiest thing to agree on is looking at a child's face and being I want the very best world possible for you. So in that sense, talking about Blink Now in our work has just been so easy, because we can all agree that children deserve their most basic human needs and rights, and making a better world for them.
Talking about it might be easy, but doing it must have been incredibly hard. And one of the things that struck me from the book is the intensity of the decisions that you've got to make. And we can talk about doing that one small thing, but I got the sense that there you kind of had to compartmentalize a few small things so that you could deal with them, but so much else that must have taken its toll on you, that sort of decision making. How do you deal with that?
Oh, it takes its toll every single day. Today was so flippin' hard. Like every day it's so hard. Life is hard. Like nobody gets an easy pass. And I love that, like, I had enough innocence and like vision and just like hope and positivity and naivete to like see the vision. And I'm also lucky I didn't know all of the like hard things that were gonna come, because if we did know how hard it was gonna be, a lot of us probably wouldn't do it. So yeah, it's been hard. It's been impossible. Like there are times in my life, so many, like including today, where it's just like, how are we gonna keep going? And then, you know, with age and with so many hard things, you get better and better at it, and you keep getting up and you go at it again, and it is and you try and you keep trying. And for me, I had the superpower of being surrounded by incredible mentors and people and a team and a co-founder and the do, like taking a chance on a 23-year-old to give a talk, flying me in from Nepal. So yeah, I think togetherness, team, working together, that's what gets you through the hard time. All of us and working together.
And of course, you've been part of that, haven't you, Libby?
Well, I have. I was also going to say Maggie is so incredibly humble, but you asked about sort of recognition. And of course, what she hasn't mentioned is winning CNN Hero of the Year and being awarded by the Dalai Lama, recognized by the Dalai Lama. So when you ask about impact and understanding the influence, needless to say, the influence and the impact is really significant. And as Maggie said, I think, you know, she does such a beautiful job of sharing, I think, what we all feel, which is, yes, we look into the eyes of children, whether they are ours, I'm not even sure what that means, quite honestly, whether they are in our houses or our neighbors or houses, it doesn't even matter, but we have to be able to do better. And I think Maggie's message is very clearly about loving our human family. I would also say, you know, the name of her organization, Blink Now, comes from this notion of, in the blink of an eye, we can all choose to take that one step. Even if there's a headwind, even if it's cold and rainy. Went out for a walk this morning with two dear friends, and, you know, we got caught in a beautiful rainstorm, which, you know, wasn't that big a deal, but those are the symbolic things of life. So today for Maggie was hard. And at the same time, we know from our walking practice or having, you know, aged into a place where, you know, the only thing we can possibly do is stay present and take that next best step. It might be hard. We're not going to think about getting all the way to some place, some location, some destination. We are going to show up right now and make the best possible decision we possibly can. And I would argue that what Maggie does so joyously, easily, nimbly, and that's not to say it's easy, but as she leads with love, period, end of story, that is So when things get complicated and you go back to that one step towards something that is loving and caring, it's not to say it's an easy decision, but certainly the world has noticed, right? From CNN to the Dalai Lama to those that we probably admire as understanding the world from a lens of love and kindness. So, I mean, I think we can all see Maggie's impact and how it goes beyond Surkhet, it goes beyond Nepal. It is, and it's no wonder that young people are reaching out to her saying, how did you do it? Can you tell me how to do it? And of course, there isn't an easy answer to that, but you know, maybe the easy answer is take that first step, try.
Yeah, absolutely. It's and take that first step, and I guess do it with love. I mean, that's the. So I'm gonna. I don't know if anyone else was going to ask this question. This is my question, Maggie. Is the thing between the mountain and the sky? Is it love? Because that's what it felt like to me.
Oh, you're the first person who said that. It's definitely love. It's the questions, the knowing, the unknowing. There's a paragraph in the book that is a love letter to Nepal, where I talk about the mountain and the sky, the mountain that held me, the mountain that anchored me, the mountain that brought me here in the sky. And when I think about my children, when I think about our life and our home here, I had this image of them flying their kites on the rooftop, which, as you know, that's the end of my do lecture. I used to just watch my children fly their kites, and just the joy and the freedom and the watching a kite sort of take flight. And I had this image of them flying their.
I think we might be losing Maggie. The signal's held out really well, but I think just about the right time, we might have lost her a bit. So it's a good opportunity to say, if you've got questions that you want to ask, throw them into the chat. We'll ask them in the last 10 minutes. There's so many you've got to ask. I think you might be back now, Maggie. You were doing the blurry thing, and your voice had gone all robotic. So I'm gonna have a quick chat with Libby for a bit.
Perfect.
So, I mean, we were talking there, Libby, weren't we, about taking that one small step, and that's something that you did back in 2011 when you stepped outside. Did you have an intent in your head that I'm going to go on this walk and then I'm going to do it again and again? Was the repetition, even if you didn't know how long it was going to stretch, was that there?
It was, really what happened in 2011 was, I say this with recognition of all the privilege I had, which was my family was healthy. I have a job that I liked, surrounded by wonderful friends, but I came to realize that a lot of my day was spent inside in meetings, doing wonderful things. There was no problem, but I had this sort of moment where I thought, oh my gosh, actually, one of the key things that makes me who I am is being outdoors. And I haven't nourished that. I haven't put that at the top of the list. And that's why I've used the language, it became radical self-care. So it just became clear to me that I needed to build in time to be outdoors, consciously be outdoors. And what I'm not talking about is from the car to the front door of the supermarket, but to consciously be outdoors. And I knew there were many lessons to be learned in the outdoors. I grew up backpacking a lot, and it made me really extraordinarily happy sleeping outdoors. So really all I did, it was in some ways kind of superficial. It was a self-care moment, but I just thought, you know what, I'm going to get up half an hour earlier than I usually do and go for a walk. And I will say it took me a minute to get over my ego. I grew up as an athlete. And so there was a moment where I thought, and when I say a moment, it might have been 2 years, but it took me a while to get over this. What do you mean you're not going for a run? What do you mean you aren't going, whatever? hike, whatever it might be. And so that took a little bit of time for me to sort of figure out. But my commitment was that I would get up and go for a walk before work every day for 30 days and see sort of what happened. And I think it's fair to say that easily by 10 days in, 2 weeks in, I thought, oh, actually, I can't imagine my day without this. And I didn't have the lessons, learning, sophistication, understanding that actually going for a walk was my best friend, my best therapist, my most creative time, a place for innovation, a place for healing, a place for creating, probably until 3 or 4 years into it, where I began to realize that as things bubbled up in life, I could take them in, tuck them in my back pocket, take them on a walk with me. And often by the end of a walk, whatever was stirring, whatever was stuck, whatever was manifesting as impatience or anger or joy, always felt better after I sort of held it and went for a walk with whatever that was. And I think the other piece for me, I think I grew up very much in my head, very logical, sort of strategic, problem solving. And in many ways, I was rewarded in my career for that. But what it meant was I was not terribly connected to my gut intuition, what I sort of felt to be true, the emotions that I intellectually understood, but had no way of articulating. And it wasn't until I started walking that I, in many ways, really got into my body and in some ways had any idea, excuse my language, what the fuck I was feeling. I wouldn't have been able to identify it. And so one of the things I say in the book is, for me, adding motion to emotion was the only way that I began to really understand that, you know, let's call it ancient wisdom, let's call it intuition, let's call it gut, let's call it primal knowing, whatever it is. So I, you know, quite honestly, I thought I'd do it for 30 days. And you know, here I am 11 years later. And I think my most powerful lessons in life have come on a walk, sometimes with friends, sometimes by myself. But no, I didn't really have any idea the potential impact at all.
But you were continuing an incredibly long tradition, you know, possibly one of the oldest traditions of ways to find thought. It was
Yes.
through when I first went to the Do lectures in, I can't remember, 20 something, that I first came across that phrase solvitur ambulando, and walking solves it, and it stuck with me forever. And I mean, I love in the book, you've got this roll call, haven't you, of other intellectual thought leaders who've done the same: William Wordsworth, Thoreau, Einstein, Oprah Winfrey, Charles Darwin, Virginia Woolf, John Muir. I mean, Mahatma Gandhi. It goes on and on, doesn't it? It's such a, like you say, a primal knowledge that we seem surprised when we come back round to it, and each time, oh wow, this is good for us. It's crazy, isn't it?
It is. It's wild. I mean, think about it. Think about the Camino. So a walk is a spiritual pilgrimage, right? That is a powerful moment, a powerful ritual. Think about some of the most powerful social justice issues that, quite honestly, are seen and understood and manifest as a walk across Selma Bridge, right? I mean, what happens when there is something that we collectively as community want to be seen for as linking arms? We walk, right? We walk. Think about Thoreau and Darwin. They walked as a way of learning, of understanding, of, you know, tapping into probably the most essential components of being human. And you know, so I just think about what happened on those spiritual treks through the Himalayas, on the Camino. It's a powerful, well, also think, you know, you're very grounded, your feet on the ground, you can't avoid anything. So it's a very, I think it's an essential component of understanding and learning.
And just as you were talking there, it was reminding me what Maggie was saying at the start about how, you know, getting out there before progress, and progress has taken so much of our connection away from us, and it's only by taking the time to realize what we've lost that we can take it back on board. But I love that about reconnecting with your gut feeling, because that's clearly such a big part of the process. The idea of setting yourself up as well, that the amount of people I've heard about the importance of daily routines and morning routines so that you go into the day really well. Again, it's replicating established knowledge, but it clearly works for you and works for so many people. It's a powerful way of setting yourself up for the day, isn't it?
Yeah, it sure is. And I'm just noticing, Karen, thank you for your question. I love you. Nice to see you. But her, you know, Karen's question is, you know, the thing about a walk and the aligning. The thing about a walk is that you see all of life, right? You see and potentially are present with all of life. In the fall, you see the seasons, you see the death, you see the slow changes, you see the tide potentially coming and going. And those are, you know, it's easy to be disconnected with the rhythms of the natural world where, you know, as Maggie sort of said, that ancient wisdom of watching what is right outside our doors as being maybe one of the most powerful teachers there is. And to know that we can walk through those seasons, both literally and metaphorically, right? I think Maggie feels this way. I know many of my dear friends who are here, we've walked through some seasons that have been tragically hard and really fucking heavy, excuse my language, and what has been the thing that has been most grounding and solid is that practice of saying, oh, what I'm feeling internally also happens in the natural world, and yet we walk together. Both, you know, even on opposite sides of the globe, we walk together. So it's a great question. I think the lessons of life are also learned metaphorically as we walk. The headwinds, what happens when you turn that bend and all of a sudden the headwinds come on and you think there's no way I can possibly, I'm tired, I've walked 10 miles, I don't think I can get back to my car. And the only thing one can do is simply take a deep breath and say, take the next step and the next step. And I think once we learn those lessons, we can apply them to so many other areas of our life. I think I certainly, when I get into a tricky situation, I think we'll remember that walk where it was really challenging. It's not dissimilar. So take the lessons from that walk and apply them here.
Maggie, just to pick up on that, because I think we come at this with a very Western philosophy where we're moved around by vehicles and we live in buildings and we flick on lights. How does that compare to the sort of the understanding of the connection with the natural world and of walking as a way of enabling that you get in a community like Nepal? Is there a recognition of that, or is it just treated as every day? Is there a walking tradition, I guess, is what I'm saying?
Well, it's so interesting. When we moved here and I was a young mom, there was this park kind of up the street and it was called Bula Bula, and there was this spring and we'd wash the clothes of the kids and we'd bathe, and you know, we had no water ever. So, and back in the day, I've lived in Nepal for 15 years, there was just some dirt roads, maybe a motorbike occasionally, no vehicles, nothing. And I've been able to live in this province now and watch development come in, watch progress come in, watch roads get paved and rice paddies get turned into, you know, brick houses, watch the rivers fill up with plastics that were never in Nepal but are now in Nepal, Coca-Cola bottles. First bicycle rickshaws came in, then more motorbikes, then Jeeps, then tuk-tuks, electric tuk-tuks, or gas-run tuk-tuks. So I've watched this whole sort of evolution and progress, development take place kind of before my eyes. I've watched myself change, you know, from having nothing and walking around to now we have a school bus to like take the kids around. So it's been this really interesting sort of study on, yeah, what development means, what you lose, what you gain. And I don't have answers, but I do know that the impact on the environment is absolutely tragic. And, you know, taking my kids for walks and, watching the local eucalyptus sort of grove get cut down in the name of development, watching the roads all paved and these beautiful Bodhi trees get chopped down in the name of development, in the name of progress, in the name of civilization. It's very concerning. We were watching, you know, we see the brickyards and there's 5-year-olds working in the brickyards and just billowing smoke and carbon going up into the atmosphere. And you watch the Himalayan glaciers melting. And so, yeah, it's just been an interesting time to watch this place change and evolve. And, you know, we got a coffee shop, which was great. Like, there's good things. Maternal mortality rates have plummeted. More girls are enrolled into primary school than have ever been enrolled into primary school in the history of time. We went from like 28% to the 95th percentile. So there's all these good things, and yet you're watching like the birds disappear and the kids can't swim in the river anymore and our forest is gone. So it's just like, we kind of tried to take that, and one of our major pillars of programming became sustainability. Because at one point I had this thought, like, we're trying to help and save and build community, but what if there isn't an earth or a planet for children to live and thrive and play and grow in? And with that, we set out to build one of the greenest, most sustainable schools in the world. That was out of need. It wasn't out of like the buzzword of going green or sustainability. It was because we never had gas to like cook food for the kids, and we never had energy. We never had water. We needed to dig a well. We needed solar. So yeah, we set out to do that and really try to make a statement about what was important and what was the value. And people thought we were crazy when we built our school out of mud. But it's been, it's just been such a journey watching it all and having these questions of like, are we better or do we need to go back? We talk about ancient wisdom in our school curriculum a lot because we're like, no, we're not just bringing in ABCD.
And I think, you know, again, it's showing that Maggie's always had a vision and has always found a vision of where things need to go. And Libby, I think that's what you're trying to help us with, isn't it? You mean, you talk about your morning walk practices as a way of finding clarity and perspective and creativity. It's clearly a powerful process, and it's there's real physicality there as well, isn't it? It's not just a bit of woo woo. Oh, this is a nice thing to do. You know, there is sound science behind why walking helps with our mental health.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. And just to follow up on Maggie's, so you all should go to blinknow.org and check out the pictures of the school. I always push her to say it's the greenest school on the planet, because I actually think it might be, but she's wonderfully humble about it. I mean, it's an absolutely incredible campus with an entirely edible landscaping, and incredible water system, on-campus farm with it's just really absolutely stunning. So please go check it out. And I think the way that relates to walking is many of the kids, there certainly is a bus that brings kids to campus, but many families and kids are I shouldn't say many, are certainly, there is a walking tradition in Circuit, and I think by way of sort of this progress, it's becoming less of a something that you know, happens. Oh, hi Maggie.
She's back.
Never
So-
really quite sure how the internet's going to be. I think it's been actually stellar so
It's
far.
amazing, isn't it? I mean, can you believe that we are literally spanning the globe for this conversation? So
Oh, I
whilst
know.
Maggie's with us, we're in question time. If you've got questions, throw them into the chat. There was a great question from Gareth earlier on. He said he wanted to hear Maggie's thoughts on how you tread the line between ruffling feathers and annoying people. How do you rattle cages enough to bring change, but not so much that you push people away? And I know this is something that is you've had to find your way, haven't you, Maggie? You're on mute, Maggie.
Oh yeah, I have so many. Can you? It started pouring rain. So yeah, I think what's really important to me when talking about, I don't know.
Are we getting both of you through both of your channels there?
Yeah, I'm gonna stick to where I was. So I think Garrett's question was about like the fact that in charity and in changing the world and in the nonprofit, I think there's a lot of self-righteousness and like like shame and blame and guilt, a lot of guilt. And so a lot of like bleeding heart, like we need to do better, a lot of martyrdom, like, yeah. So there's this like whole can of worms that comes with charity and our traditional meaning of charity. And I also think we need to flip that on the head. Shame and blame and guilt and pointing fingers of how we got here it's not an effective tool to get people to like move and activate and figure out what philanthropy or what activism is going to look like for them. You know, Duke, who's a DO legend, has been a mentor to me from the early days. And he always says, are you operating from a place of inspiration or desperation? And I've never forgotten that line. It was something that someone taught him. And in the charity world and in the nonprofit world and just the state of the world, it's really easy to sink into desperation and like, do you know how bad the world is right now? Do you know how many hundreds of millions of orphan children there are? Do you know about hunger stats? And for me, like, I just have never been able to connect with people that way. So back to love, back to heart-centeredness, back to inspiration, back to dreaming what is possible for our human family, for our children. Blink Now's vision is a world where every child is safe and educated and loved. And we use love, the word love, very, very mindfully and conscientiously. And yeah, I just think we need to change the paradigm. Even when you think about those commercials talking about kids and hunger, you like see the sullen faces and the starvation. And it's like, we just need to activate and change the way that we talk about charity. There's some really good TED Talks out there. One's by Dan Pallotta. It's really good conversations out there on changing the way we think and talk about charity.
Yeah, everybody has to see that TED Talk. I'll try and put it in the chat. It's by Dan Pallotta. It's actually essential for us to all watch, I think.
And I mean, there was a magical connection between both books in that you both ended it talking about the importance of love. And again, I think it goes back to one of those, that foundational knowledge that again, we come back to it and go, oh, wow, you know, approaching change from the heart is more powerful than it is from the head. I mean, Libby, that's exactly how you introduce your practice, isn't it? That have you noticed that the difference in the impact that it makes then, Libby, is as a result of connecting with your gut feeling and tuning into the love that you can find for a situation?
Oh, yeah, because I think for me, my thoughts can tell me all sorts of stories. I think I have data and I'm making a case for something, but when I actually know what I'm feeling, then I know what the answer is, right? I just have to get quiet. And I think the thing about walking for me is it creates a space, this pocket, this sort of place where many things disappear, it's quiet, and so the only knowing I have is what's sort of resides in me, and but I can tell myself a lot of stories. And so yes, I think it's fundamentally changed my life. I think my walking practice as simple as it sounds, has been entirely transformative for me. I actually can't imagine my life without it. In fact, I've loved it so much, I just got my first tattoo at 60 and it says "This Morning Walk."
I've seen the pictures. Good effort. Everyone needs a tattoo of the things that are important to them. I think it's powerful. So and clearly, Maggie, it's the same for you. I mean, you have always operated from love, haven't you? It's been love that's driven you on an incredible journey, which we've not really talked about, but there's some low points in here. And it's the love that you have for others and that they have for you that's powered you through, isn't it, really?
Yeah. I mean, one of the themes in the book is grief, because I've had a lot of loss, I've had a lot of personal tragedy, and we in the book it's like about how grief is actually just love. I think that's a quote that's not mine. But yeah, it's grief is love, and loss is love. And I've lost my child, I've lost so much, and have had so much failure and so much falling, and through it all, love became my anchor and my thing that kind of kept me going, and not in like a woo-woo Pollyanna type of way, but just like that next step, and believing that love is still there, and believing that love will always be there. And following the heart. And if you look at the book, it's just love story after love story after love story after love story. And there is a lot of loss, and there's a lot of pain, and there's a lot of just like, oh my God, what now? But there's always love showing up again and again and again when you need it to, when you least expect it to. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I remember
It's
talking
powerful.
to you at one point, Maggie. It was it was a very, very sad day. And I remember talking to you, and it was when we had a conversation about writing love letters to your children, and how that as a healing tool, despite the fact that it was a very, very challenging time, had the potential of just reminding you, that the love is still really, really powerfully present. It was hard to see.
One of the working titles for the book was actually Love Letters to My Children. And it's because, and each chapter is actually framed with a line from a love letter that I wrote. And again, like going back to love, I started a practice where I would write little love letters to my children and kind of just remember the loose teeth, and the first footsteps, and the pitter patter that you hear in the morning when your child comes running into bed, and just like those little things that we live for. And my favorite part of the book is the love letters, and then the love letter to the children at the end. But my favorite line in the book is, grief does not exist because love is gone. It exists because love is everywhere. And choosing at this moment in time to believe that love is still everywhere, all around us, is an act of bravery. And when I look at myself as a 35-year-old woman, I feel brave. I feel brave. And my proudest thing in the book is that I kept believing in love, even when there was no reason for me to. Like, I lost everything that I loved. And so, and there was still love, and there is still love. And today was a really hard day, and there is still love waiting for me downstairs. So love is everything, and we need to keep talking about it. It is the thing. It is the reason why we're all here,
Well, you've both done an absolutely incredible job of talking about it and opening up that conversation, showing us how to process that emotion and work through it. Thank you. I'm blown away. I'm almost speechless, which is not good for the host, is it? What a wonderful conversation. Thank you both. Thank you for your books. Thank you for your insight. Thank you for being vulnerable enough to share it. And Maggie, thank you for everything you do. If anyone, these aren't on the Do Book Co website anymore. We have still got a few copies. If anyone on the back of this conversation would still like a copy, drop me an email. We can sort you out. It's not on the website because we've moved over to next month's books now. But if you would like copies, they're there. I think we popped in the Blink Now link for making donations to Blink Now. They're doing amazing work. Maggie's doing amazing work. They need our support, and they deserve it as well. So that's wonderful. And we all know what you're going to be doing tomorrow morning, don't we? You're going to be going out and going for a walk and following Libby's example and tying on those walking shoes. If you do, we would absolutely love to hear from you. Sorry,
absolutely. And Miranda and Tim, thank you so much for hosting us. It's always nice to talk about this. And Maggie, go get some nice rest. I love you. I'll talk to you later.
Thank you all. Thank you all for believing in us and in this book and supporting our kids. Lots of love to everyone.
Bye. I love you.